Less than 2% of people who die in Australia actually die in a way where organ donation is possible. We have people who can donate up to the age of 80, even older. I'm going to help restore the sight of two people, even though he was, admitted to hospital, wasn't going home. I've heard a recipient absolutely loved garlic, had a transplant, all of a sudden really hated garlic, going through that at a time of acute grief when you may have not had the chance to have that last conversation or that last goodbye. We don't like talking about death, but it's often one of the most important conversations someone could actually have.
Don't Be Caught Dead, the show bringing stories of death back to life. Here's your host, Catherine Ashton.
Samantha Stones is donation specialist nurse coordinator who works with families who have just received the news in a hospital that their loved one will not survive. Sam is brought into this incredibly delicate conversation with families in a private hospital room and provides support and information to the family so they can make the decision that is best for them about donating their loved one's organs and or tissue. This week is Donate Life Week, and it is about creating awareness for organ and tissue donation. So Sam is the best person for us to speak to today. Thanks for being with us, Sam.
Honoured to be here with you and your listeners today to talk about organ donation.
So tell me, when did you start working for Donate Life Victoria?
I started working for Donate Life Victoria about 2 years ago, and I'm looking forward to spending many more years helping support families.
And what does Donate Life Victoria do?
So Donate Life Victoria is the organ donation service for Victoria. Each state has their own organ and tissue donation service. And we are based in hospitals across the state of Victoria, where we work with hospitals to support the clinicians in looking after families who have a loved one at end-of-life care. We also help provide education to all of the staff in the hospitals about organ and tissue donation.
And so you just mentioned that you hope to have many more years than your two with Donate Life Victoria. So what is it about your job that makes you get out of bed every day?
So I find helping someone at the end of their life an incredibly honourable act. And I am always in awe of our families and their generosity when I meet them. I hope that we provide lots of comfort for our families when taking the time to help them consider organ donation.
And tell me, can you walk me through that process when someone has received the news that their loved one is going to die? Is that the point that you meet with the families? Can you talk me through that process?
So initially, a referral is made by the treating doctors of that person when they believe someone is at the end of their life. And once the family have acknowledged or accept the information that their loved one is going to die, we would have what we would call a donation conversation. So I'm introduced as either a donation specialist or a end-of-life specialist. And we have a conversation about talking about the rare opportunity to help others through becoming an organ donor. We offer support in them making that decision as well. If they do consent for organ donation, we then go through the donation workup process with them.
So what are the things you cover off in that conversation with the family when you're presenting, the aspects of donating organs or tissue? What sort of things do you talk through?
We talk about the rarity of organ donation. So less than 2% of people who die in Australia are actually die in a way where organ donation is possible. So you have to be in a intensive care unit or an ED, and you have to be intubated, so have a breathing tube in.
Yeah, right. I didn't realise it was that smaller percentage.
No, it's actually a really small amount of people who die in a way where organ donation is possible. So it is an incredibly rare opportunity to be able to help others through donation.
And why is that? What is it about the process that requires those requirements?
To become an organ donor, you need to die in a way where we're able to still support your organs and tissues for the process of the workup of the donation. And that can take up to 24 to 48 hours for us to complete. And we also would need time to organise the recipients as well as the surgical team.
Yeah, right. So it's that delay in, okay, we've got someone who might have this particular blood type with this particular organ, and then it's finding the recipient, isn't it?
So I work directly with the donors. So I'm responsible for the donor workup, which includes taking the blood type and doing lots of different tests, as well as collating a medical and social history of the potential donor. And that can take some time to get all that information across. And then I give that information to the transplant teams, who will then choose a recipient and organise the recipient from their side. Yeah.
And that must be very difficult because you can't, well, I'm assuming you can't really ask the patient what their history is. You're really going on the hearsay of the family or loved ones that are around. Is that right?
Yep. So one of the things we do is we do ask the family a medical social questionnaire. It's quite extensive. It's 64 questions, and it goes from where they were born to what type of work they did and if they took part in any type of risky behaviours. And then we marry that up with information that we're able to find through medical records. So things like your GP history, or if you've ever seen a specialist. We then look at your current blood test results and the reason that you came to the hospital as well.
So when you're saying those questions, it reminds me of the questions that I normally have to go through when I give a blood donation.
Yes, they're very, very similar to those questions. Yep. But I actually really enjoy doing the medical social questionnaire with the families because it means that I get to learn about who the donor was as a person. And I often hear about all of their travel stories and where they've been, or when they got a tattoo or something like that. And it brings out a bit of a story about that donor, which I think is incredibly special.
And is that social aspect captured and then passed on or documented to the donor or the recipient of that particular organ or tissue?
So organ donation is entirely confidential. So whilst I gather that information, the only information that goes to the transplant teams is all de-identified. Families and recipients can communicate through de-identified means through Donate Life Victoria. So they can write letters to each other, which are then passed on, which is incredibly special. I've seen letters from recipients to donors dating back to when I was in primary school, and I thought it was just incredibly special that they had been communicating that entire time.
That's really beautiful because really from memory, and I probably should have researched this before we spoke, but I remember Fiona Coote, I believe, being the first heart transplant recipient in the 80s. Was that right?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Well, that's one I'll have to include in the show notes, won't I?
Yeah,
But
I think so.
I remember, for whatever reason, I remember her name obviously quite prominently.
I just want to Google her now.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we should. Okay, we can do this. Let's go Fiona Coote and donor. She received her first heart transplant, looks like Victor Chang, and she's the longest surviving heart transplant recipient in Australia. There you go, 1984. She was a 14-year-old and was struck down by a viral infection that irreversibly weakened her heart. And she was kept alive on total life support until Dr. Victor Chang performed a successful heart transplant at St Vincent's Hospital, Sydney. And then that heart began to fail after 2 years, and she received a second heart transplant. And now she's the longest surviving heart transplant recipient in Australia and is living a full and happy life.
That's amazing.
So there you go. There's a success story for you, Sam.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of her before. You'd think I would have in my job.
Having said that, that was before the internet. And before we could Google, so,
Yeah.
84.
I have a friend who it's actually quite a cute story. So we met in primary school, and when I was quite little, she always had blue lips in primary school, and I never knew why at the time because I obviously wasn't medical trained at that time. And then we lost touch from primary school, and then I actually ran into her when I was working in the operating theatre before I worked for Donate Life, and she was doing one of her final nursing placements, and she still had blue lips then, and we reconnected, and she ended up going on ahead. I knew that the blue lips meant that there was probably something wrong with her heart or lungs at that stage, but didn't obviously ask. And then I saw that she had actually had a heart and lung transplant, and it's just amazing because she's now a successful nurse, which I think is just so special.
Wow. And
Yeah.
now she goes on to help others.
Yeah. I think that's, really sweet that she is able to help others, and to have known her through that journey, I think is incredibly special as well. It just makes me feel that the people that were so generous to do that don't give her that second chance, and to see that she's doing something and thriving. I think that she recently may have purchased her own house or something. It was very exciting. I saw it on Facebook.
Because that is the difference organ donation makes, isn't it? Whether someone lives or dies.
Yeah, it can. It definitely can mean that for people. It's life-saving what donation is, donation means to other people. I have another friend. We used to work together as carers before I graduated, and I knew that she was on sick leave, but then one day she posted a picture of her in the intensive care unit and said that she had a awful autoimmune disease that attacked her liver. She actually had a liver transplant, and she didn't want to tell anyone she was sick because she was so scared that she was going to pass away, and wanted to only give people the good news that she was going to be okay. And she's actually gone on to have 2 children of her own. She now runs a really successful business, and it just, puts into perspective how important and how life-saving organ donation is.
And is that common for people to feel hesitant to actually let people know that they do suffer from a life-limiting illness and they need organ donation, and they don't share that story, just based on your personal experience?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I know that my friend, the one who's had the liver transplant and the one who's had the heart and lung transplant, were very stoic in their illnesses. I'm not sure if other people would be or not, but I just remember them, like, I suppose you kind of just live with what you've got, kind of. If you, like my friend who had the blue lips her whole life up until she had her transplant, I don't think she knew any different compared to what it would feel like. I can't imagine what it would feel like to take a breath the first time when you haven't been able to breathe properly for your entire life.
That's so true. It's just what they know, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's probably that innate resilience that they just kind of probably just go through every day, day in, day out.
Mm.
Because without the support of someone like Donate Life, that's really what they have to do.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologise.
Yeah.
Don't apologise whatsoever. I'm asking some curly questions here. So
and more about recipients when I'm more focused on the donors, and it's just that those were my 2 friends.
No, that's totally fine. So tell me, Sam, what led to you becoming involved? You started off as a carer, you were saying, and then you moved into what sort of roles?
So I was a carer before I graduated from nursing school. So I completed a degree in nursing, and then I had this really strong passion to work in the operating theatre. And the reason that I wanted to work in the operating theatre was I was actually sick as a kid. I didn't have a transplant, but I was sick as a child and spent a lot of time in the operating theatre, to the point where I've had 30 operations or something. And during my last year in high school, I actually had a family member who passed away, and they generously consented to organ donation, or my family made a decision for them that they had consented for organ donation, and they helped many people. through organ donation. And then when I was working in the operating theatre, I met a donation coordinator, and I was just in awe at about how she was able to talk to us about something that we hadn't often seen, even as people who work in healthcare, and help support our staff. And then we saw the donation operation and assisted with it. And then we actually got a letter at the end thanking us for our assistance in helping with that particular organ donation. And I just remember thinking when I saw her, I think I was like 21 at the time, I was like, what a cool job to be able to have and to be able to support families that went through something that I went through as a teenager. And then I worked in theatre for many years after that. I ended up in education and research and a few other different nursing roles. And then I saw the ad for Donate Life and I said, well, I may as well, try to see if they'll take me. And I was successful. Yeah.
And who gave you that letter after you'd been involved in the operation?
So the letter was given to me by the nurse unit manager at the time, and it was from that donor coordinator who actually still works for Donate Life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I know when you're going through that training, you are almost desensitized because you're seeing so many operations and so many different procedures and you become familiar. But to actually receive a beautiful letter, that must have been really quite amazing.
Yeah, I think she helped 3 people through donation, the lady that I was involved with. It's actually one of my favourite parts of the job now, writing those letters to thank all the staff for their assistance in donation. Like I said, the workup can take quite a while to do. So
That's so funny. So you have done a full circle and now you're the one that writes those letters.
yeah, I'm about to write a few letters today. I've got a few due actually. Where I will be thanking the police for helping me with transporting bloods, to the hospital staff for helping with doing tests and the organ donation operation, as well as we also write letters to the families to give them some information about the recipients as well.
That's amazing because all of these first responders and those in care roles that you mentioned, that's just part of their everyday life, isn't it? So for them to receive a thank you out of the blue must be pretty amazing.
I would like to hope so. And it just shows you that they're so willing to help when it comes to something that's so rare and has such a profound impact on people. Like just the day before yesterday, I was on call and I had to call in an entire team to do a particular test. And they were more than happy to come in to help facilitate that, to fulfill that family's wish of organ donation.
That's fantastic.
And that person went on to donate, and I think they donated 4 or 5 organs in the end. Yeah, just so incredibly generous.
And those 4 or 5 organs could go on potentially to how many people?
4 or 5 people. So an organ donor can save the lives of up to 7 people.
Yeah,
But
wow.
that person donated their heart, their liver, their kidneys. Yeah.
The ripple effect and the life-changing aspects of the work you do is mind-blowing. Like, do you know, has there been research done on how far that kind of impact of improving life and loved ones has been done?
Oh, that's a very good question. I know that Donate Life has done a study on the impact of organ donation. I think it's called the WAVE study, and it tells us a bit about why people choose organ donation and what they remember from their conversations. And one of the things is that they find a lot of comfort in knowing that they've been able to help other people in a really sad time. They've been able to help and provides comfort to them.
And has there ever been anyone that has actually said, no, I'm not comfortable with that? Like, how do you navigate that sort of situation?
Not comfortable with
organ donation?
Well, I think the first part of that is establishing or making sure that the patient knows or the family knows that I'm actually on their team. I just want to make sure that they make a informed decision about organ donation. And I know that there's a lot of myths in the community about organ donation. So I will thank them for letting me know that they're not comfortable about it. And I will gently ask them, can you tell me a little bit more about why you're uncomfortable, or if there's anything I can do to help make sure that they have all the right information to make that decision. Just one example of that is I recently had a donor who injected drugs, and their next of kin initially declined donation because they thought it wouldn't be safe because they knew that they injected drugs. But that's not actually the case. And I explained that to them, and they then actually just said that, if it's safe and it'll be safe for the recipients, then yes, of course we would. I was just worried that it wouldn't be safe because of the drug injecting, or they wouldn't be able to donate because of the drug injecting, for example.
And what are some of the other common myths that you find that people have in their head about the reasons why they perhaps are hesitant?
It could be that they think they're too old. That's very rarely the case. We have people who can donate up to the age of 80, even older. It really depends on their health history, or they might think that they might look different after donation. Donation operations are done with exceptionally highly qualified surgeons who the care and dignity of our donors is of our most highest priority.
So if people had concerns about donating their organs and, oh my goodness, we won't be able to have an open coffin or a viewing, that's not the case, is it?
Yeah, that's an absolute myth. You can still have an open casket at your end of life ceremony or funeral or celebration of life. Once you're dressed for your funeral, no one would know that you've been a donor.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to cover off on. And about religion, some people say that, Buddhism, Hinduism, but they aren't barriers to organ donation, are they?
No, religion is certainly not a barrier to organ donation. Some people may think that because they follow a particular religion that they can't donate, but we actually know that most religions support organ donation. And if that is a concern for a family, I would offer to get their religious leader, if they're comfortable, to have a conversation with us about donation.
That's fantastic. So bringing in that expert within the religious space to have those conversations is fantastic.
Yeah. And if a family has a particular requirement, I recently had a donor who was, I believe, of Muslim faith, and I asked the family, what's the most important thing for you? And they said to me that the most important thing for us is that this is done as quickly as possible so that that person can go to the mosque. And I said, okay, sure. And I made sure that everything happened as efficiently as possible so that we could fulfill that wish of that person going to the mosque as soon as possible.
And can you talk me through the process? You have a conversation, you do their workup with their bloods, etc. There's that period of delay or possible delay depending on finding the recipient. What happens then? What's the process for family to say goodbye? What sort of options are they given?
Well, firstly, there is a consent process in there after the family verbally agreed a donation, where we talk about the medical social questionnaire. So that takes about an hour to do. We go into quite a lot of detail. In terms of saying goodbye to their loved one, there's no right or wrong time for them to say goodbye. We encourage them, if they would like to, stay with their loved one as long as they can. There is 2 different pathways to donation. So there's one where someone is declared brain dead and they can stay with that person up until they go to the operating theatre. And in the other pathway, their death is determined by their heart stopping, so cardiac determination of death. And with that one, once again, the family can still be there right up until it's time to go to the operating theatre. It just looks a little bit different in terms of the timings, that's all.
And is it longer or shorter? Or
when someone is declared brain dead, they will go to the operating theatre with the breathing tube still in, and their heart will stop in the operating theatre. With cardiac death, the breathing tube is taken out in the intensive care unit, and the family can still be there for that. Once their heart has stopped, there's a brief period to say goodbye. And by brief, I mean 5 minutes. And then that person will be taken to their donation.
And I'm assuming that's because there's that very short time frame to then get the organ out while the blood's still circulating. Would that be right? Or
the blood would have stopped circulating, but yes, essentially it's about how long the organs would have oxygen or be without oxygen for.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me, how do you support the family through this process?
So when I speak to the families, I go through the entire process and I explain at different points what will happen or what it would be like to happen. And then I gently remind them as we get closer to the time of donation. So, for example, if it's the cardiac death pathway, I would say, we're almost ready to take the breathing tube out. We're going to make sure your loved one is comfortable. And when it's time to go to the operating theatre, I will come into the room and I will be with them the entire way through.
That is very challenging.
If there's any question they have at any point in time, I just address that question at that point.
And tell me, how do you suggest people support those loved ones in that process? Because it's obviously highly emotional. They have to make that conscious decision. And how do you, friends and family outside that intimate circle, how can we support people?
Very good question. I think for those people who are helping support a loved one who's got a person going through donation, I think allowing them some space and time to ventilate whatever is going through their mind. It can be, a lot of people say it can be difficult to see someone on a ventilator, and I completely agree. But those people, the donors, like I said, our highest priority is to make sure that they are comfortable and that they have a dignified and respectable death. So we ensure that they've got pain relief if they need it, and that they're warm, for example, if that's something that's important to the family. A lot of my families tell me that they don't have time to eat or they don't feel like they can eat. So as someone who's helped support other family members going through deaths, bringing them some food, they might not feel like eating it. Even a coffee also can help, or giving them some space to go out, leave the intensive care unit if they want to. If they're worried about their loved one being alone in the hospital, maybe you could offer to come in and sit with them so they can go home and have a shower or a sleep.
Because it is a very intensive sort of short window, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It can be.
And more intensive, than perhaps people who have been given a life-limiting illness. And so is it correct in thinking that a lot of the time this 2% may be because of an accident or an unexpected death?
They most certainly can be from an accident or an unexpected death. It can also be something that's become complicated, some health condition that's become complicated and ended up that they've ended in ICU and going through end-of-life care. In terms of what disease processes or anything like that would exclude donation, there's not actually that many. The only one would be a blood cancer or cancer that's spread. However, people who have cancer that's spread, so metastatic cancer, they can still actually donate their corneal tissue, so their eye tissue, which I think is just amazing. I had a friend who passed away about 18 months ago. He was 33 and got a diagnosis of stage 4 bowel cancer. And it was actually, must have been over 18 months ago, because I just started at Donate Life as he was unfortunately diagnosed. And one of his questions to me was like, oh, they're not going to want my organs now. And I said, I don't know, I haven't started my training.
Good answer. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'll come back in 6 months. Unfortunately for him, his cancer did progress quite quickly, and he did ask me that question another time, and I remember I was in, I don't know how to put it other than I was in friend mode,
Yeah.
not nurse mode. They're two different people in my brain. And he saw the look on my face and he's like, I can't donate anything, can I? And I was like, look, I think you can donate your corneas, but I'm in friend mode, so you'll have to just get your doctor to call a number if it's something that you want. And he did. He called Donate Life and self-consented for corneal donation. And then every time I visited him after he consented for his donation, he would be telling me, oh, I'm going to help restore the sight of two people, even though he was, admitted to hospital, wasn't going home. That was like, it was very comforting that he was able to make that decision, one, on his own, and two, that he had the understanding and meaning behind that he was going to help people in such a really sad circumstance for him and his wife.
And tell me, how do people nominate to be an organ donor? Like, I think it used to be through the driver's license, and that's process changed now, has it?
Yeah, so unless you live in South Australia, you can't register on your driver's license. Registration is actually really simple. So you can do it on the donatelife.gov.au website or the Express Plus Medicare app. It only takes, I think, 3 taps or 3 clicks to get there to do it. My father-in-law, actually, when I started this job, or told him that I'd just been successful in the application, he said to me, I'm an organ donor. And I said, are you sure? And we pulled up his Medicare app and he actually wasn't registered, even though he thought he had. So I think the most important thing is to check if you want to be an organ donor, to make sure that you're registered, and to check on the Medicare app if you are, and then to tell your family about it too, so that they know if they ever have to make that decision for you. Yeah.
I know when I heard this one about the driver's license, I went back and it was through my Gov app that I must have accessed the Medicare and made sure that I was registered. And, well, there's no surprise that there's plenty of conversations in our house about death and our intentions and our wishes. So the whole family knows exactly what, I want to do. So, but do you find when you're talking with families, how many people have had that conversation?
So not many at all actually have had that conversation about whether they want to be a donor or not. And we know that if you do have that conversation, it makes that decision so much easier for your loved one who's going through unmeasurable grief in that moment. Those conversations, I understand in our culture, we don't like talking about death, but it's often one of the most important conversation someone could actually have. And it doesn't have to be, an extensive conversation. It could just be, slip it in that you've registered, like at the dinner table. Oh, thanks. Can you pass the peas? By the way, I'm a registered organ donor, if that ever comes up.
I love that. And I always say those conversations are perfect for the car. Captive audience. They have to listen.
Yep, they do. Yep. Even myself, my partner definitely knows my wishes, but I know that the other family members don't like having those conversations. And unfortunately, having me as their family member, they have had to have that conversation. Yeah.
I love that. But we can't all have you, Sam. So we all need to have those conversations with our own families.
Yeah.
And well, let's talk about some of the other myths that may be around organ donation. So, have you heard any stories about muscle memory? Or again, you're from the donor side. This is more from the recipient side, so you may not be aware. But have you heard any stories about any organs that have the recipients taken on, and they find that they now get heartburn or something now?
I've only heard a few of those stories through the media, and I still think that those are kind of incredibly special that those type of things may happen. I don't know whether there is any scientific, basis of those types of things. I think the most recent one that I've heard was a recipient all of a sudden really hated, I think it was garlic, hated garlic, had a transplant, absolutely loved garlic from, the moment that they'd had their transplant done, which I think it's a special thing that to have that, to be able to share that connection with someone.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not aware of any scientific basis.
That was Sam as the friend, nurse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now tell me if you were saying that Donate Life is sort of the conduit, if the recipient and the families of the donor want to communicate. So how does that happen? Talk me through that.
So what would happen is either the donor or the recipient would write a letter. They can send gifts if they want to as well. The letter is then checked to make sure that there's no identifying elements to it. It is then passed on by, I believe, our support coordinator to the other person, so either the corresponding donor or recipient from there. There's also a service of remembrance that we have each year. I believe it's in November, where donor families and recipients can come to pay respect to our donors.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Where's that held?
I believe it's held in Melbourne. It's held at Melbourne Town Hall, but there's one in each corresponding state, which is, you can find more information out on the Donate Life website for those.
That's great. And what we'll do is we'll include those links in the show notes, because that's really beautiful. Because when you think 2% of the population that gets to give this gift, to the ability to come together and talk with others, must be very valuable for those people.
Yeah, and to be able to share their experiences as a loved one of a donor, or to be able to show, that they're doing really well with their transplant, for example, it would be incredibly special. I don't think I've ever heard of someone going to one of those services of remembrance without having a little tear.
Yes, I could imagine it would be very emotional. And what do you do for yourself, Sam? Because you're really in amongst it with the families the entire time. What do you do for yourself, for your own self-care?
That's a good question. I love a bit of crafting, to be honest. I'm currently trying to learn how to sew. It's not going well, but it's at least fun to try.
At least you're trying. Yeah.
My sibling who donated, we often will chat about her around her anniversary of donation, and we light a candle and think about her in that way. And we do the same. My father passed away 10 years ago very suddenly, so we do something similar to him. And I just acknowledge that while I have grief from my own family members passing away, that I'm offering a small part of comfort to our donors' families. So I keep that in mind, that I'm helping support them in their grief, and it's not my grief. My grief is separate to theirs. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
No, it seems to, because you were talking about how you make sure that you have different hats when you're in different parts of your life.
Yeah.
So
there's nurse mode and Sam mode, basically.
Yeah. No, I like that. And sometimes that's a survival mechanism of having those compartmentalized and running concurrently together.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't give my 100% to every donor family that I have, but that's just how I separate the two in my life.
Well, I think it's valuable to actually have boundaries, so you can continue to do this for a very long period of time.
Yeah, thank you. I also just make sure I exercise and eat healthy, but they're the boring parts of self-care, I suppose.
Yeah, everyone wants to hear there's just a magic wand, and it's not based on eating properly, sleeping well, and exercise.
It's definitely the sewing. The sewing is the
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that'll be the thing that'll get you through.
Yeah.
And then tell me, from your perspective, what do you think are the most significant challenges that the loved ones face when they're in this situation?
I think the decision becomes harder if they don't know what their loved one wants. in terms of donation, whether that's they haven't registered themselves or they haven't had a conversation about donation, because then they're asked to make a decision on their behalf and they have never had that opportunity to talk about it. And also going through that at a time of acute grief when you may have not had the chance to have that last conversation or that last goodbye. It certainly makes it easier if they have had some type of conversation. There was a donor recently where the donor themselves wasn't actually registered, which is not uncommon in Victoria. Only 22% of people are registered, and that's why we encourage everyone to get to register themselves and have that conversation. But they'd actually had a conversation with their family. They had a baby via IVF, and they said to their family that because someone helped me conceive my little love, I want to help pay it forward if that ever happened to me. So that their family knew that without a doubt that they wanted to be a donor, which made that decision so much easier for them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And how has the last 2 years shaped or molded you, with your own thought about death?
Well, I think I've got a healthy appreciation that death is inevitable, to enjoy all the moments in your life, even the sitting on the couch, eating M&Ms. And I've made sure that if I was ever in a position where I was being considered as a potential organ donor, everyone in my life knows that I would 100% say yes. I've even considered, not that I can actually do this, but I've even considered like maybe I'd just fill out the consent form myself so that they have it, so it's abundantly clear. But I am registered and my family do know.
Well, it looks like you've taken your own advice very well and done everything you possibly can to ensure that happens should the situation arise.
Thank you. Yeah.
And is there any advice or encouragement that you'd like to share?
To consider what you would want in terms of organ donation, knowing that you could help save the lives of up to 7 people, how rare it is, and take that time to do those 3 taps to register on the Medicare app, and then to tell your family when you have them as a captive audience, like you said, in the car or something like that. It is a difficult conversation, but it's one of the most important things you can do to help give someone a second chance at life.
That's beautiful, Sam. I can't thank you enough for being with us today. And do you say Happy Donate Life Week?
We can say Happy Donate Life Week. We could also say, hang on, there's a note above my head. 1 second.
Yep, good.
This Donate Life Week be the reason someone gets a second chance at life. Register as an organ and tissue donor.
Yeah, that's great. Beautiful advice. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
Don't be caught dead forgetting to subscribe. And here are some more videos we know you'll love.